Welcome everybody to a very special event today. My name is John Tellerico and I will be your moderator for today's Fireside Chat with 4 of the powerhouses in the sustainable development movement. During the last few months, the Caribbean has taken a serious hit with its economies being decimated and unemployment at over 46%. The region needs not just your prayers and hope, but inspiration, innovation, and co-creation to transform the Caribbean business development ecosystem. Today, I'm joined by these 4 powerhouses as we discuss how to create sustainable investment and impactful innovation in times of economic uncertainty. And joining me today is Dr. Didicus Jules, the Director General of the OECS Commission. Mr. Les Brown, voted by Toastmasters as the top 5 world's greatest speakers of all time. He won't tell you, but I will. He was voted number 1. Winner of the prestigious Golden Gavel Award. His message has been heard by billions around the world, Fortune 500 companies, and audiences as large as 80,000 people. He continues to teach, inspire, and motivate people to stay hungry and discover their greatness. Also, we have with us Mr. Chinedu Ichiro, a serial entrepreneur who founded the company Hopstop in 2005 and later sold his company to Apple for over $1 billion. He's now the co-founder of the Love and Magic Company. It's a tech-forward, innovative, inclusive consultancy focused on transforming startups and corporations into what they call beloved organizations. And last but not least, the People's Shark himself, the fashion pioneer and global icon, who turned a $40 loan into a $6 billion enterprise with the clothing line FUBU. He's also an investor, philanthropist, New York Times best-selling author, and star of the ABC TV show Shark Tank, Mr. Damon John. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Dr. Jules, why don't we get started with you? And let's get on to this discussion today. And I'd like you to speak to the science of co-creating alongside entrepreneurial superpowers, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, it's a really great pleasure and honor to be with these distinguished gentlemen. I would like to begin by first giving a brief explanation of what the OECS is, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, because most people think the Caribbean is just a collection of islands with beautiful beaches and much sunshine. But the OECS is a grouping of, if you look at a map of the Caribbean, the chain of islands, which Derek Walker describes as the emerald chain of islands, is really what constitutes the OECS. They are the smallest islands in the Caribbean, in that grouping from the north, starting with the British Virgin Islands and coming all the way down the chain to Grenada in the south. It involves 6 independent member states of the Caribbean, 2 French territories, Martinique and Guadeloupe, and a couple British dependencies. But we are united by geography and history. And it really is a challenge for us to take on, look at the science of co-creating along entrepreneurial superpowers. And it's really a great confluence for us to have persons as transformational as Les and Chinedu and Damon come on board in this effort. A challenge for us in the regional integration movement is how do we ignite that fire in the spirit and in the purpose of this movement. We need to ignite fire in spirit and purpose to have this regional integration happen, because history has conspired against us. We have been through someone has said that the Caribbean has been at the confluence of human civilization. At a certain point in history, all of the great civilizations of the world came through the Caribbean. It was as much a crossing of ships as it was a crossing of swords. So you had Europe and Africa and India all converging in the Caribbean in that phase of globalization. So, but that confluence was also a very divisive movement, because we had the impact of colonialism. And we see what's happening today in the United States with the Black Lives Matter movement. It is very clear that history matters, and it matters even more than we have recognized in the past. So for us, the SDM, the Sustainable Development Movement, was conceptualized as this catalytic initiative In the history of the Caribbean, the strongest common thread in the philosophies of our most transformational leaders, whether do you consider them leaders from the political angle or from the cultural angle, has been what we call the mind shift. From Marcus Garvey to Bob Marley, from Eric Williams to Maurice Bishop, from the mighty Sparrow to Black Stalin, the key to the empowerment and liberation of the formerly oppressed people of color of the Caribbean is about thinking differently about ourselves, our condition, our potential, and our possibilities. So our starting point was, how do we inspire and ignite this fire for thinking and acting differently to shape better futures, to see beyond the problems that assail us to the possibilities that can empower us? And the answer to this how was to look at those who are at the forefront of today's mind shifts. The Les Browns, the Damon Johns, the Chenedus, who are the contemporary authors of the mind shift. The second challenge was, how do we ensure that this was not just about individual empowerment, but also about social and collective progress? How do we connect that vision of individual progress with collective purpose and national aspiration? And the answer to this, we felt, was to incorporate, localize, and adopt the globally accepted sustainable development goals as representing that collective aspiration. The Sustainable Development Movement is directly relevant to 12 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And it seeks to ignite entrepreneurial action and innovation in addressing those goals, such as zero hunger, goal number 2, good health, number 3, quality education, number 4, gender equality, number 5, clean energy, number 7, decent work and economic growth, number 8, industry and innovation, number 9, responsible consumption and production, number 12, climate action, 13, life below water, 14, life on land, 15, and finally partnerships, which is what this encounter today is all about. The third challenge was, how do we make this more than just a one-time motivational event? How to move beyond the feel-good euphoria of the events to a permanent posture of possibility. In other words, how do we keep the fire lit, burning brightly and spreading widely? The Eastern poet Rumi once said, and I quote, "As you start to walk out on the way appears." The answer, therefore, was to focus on sustainability and legacy. The many events leading up to the September summit, including this fireside chat, were all designed to pave the road as we walk it. A fast-paced sprint were all designed to pave that road that sought to motivate and mobilize more and more bringers of fire as it progressed along the way. The 21 SDM ambassadors from 15 countries have all started their mobilization journeys. So we've started seeding this movement by having other people bring the message out into their geographies. That includes countries as far away as India. One of our SDM ambassadors is an older professor from India who taught at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. So all of them, each following their passion to encourage others and to converge at our September staging point. So we expect that the SDM 2020 will create this legacy when we are able through the unrelenting efforts of our development cooperation team led by Lisa to bring together this constellation of movers and shakers, the bringers of light and fire such as Les, Damon, John, and Chinedu. We are destined for greatness. And the OECS will have a group of transformers who can help us to drive our investment and our innovation drive. We think this is the key to the science of co-creating at the kernel of that science of co-creating is associations, it's alliances, it's about partnerships, right? But led and driven by persons of experience and a proven track record to help create that entrepreneurial superpower that we believe lies within all of us, but collectively among the people of the OECS and the Caribbean. So gentlemen, I really want to express our deep appreciation to all of you for being part of this transformational journey. And I know our heads of government are quite excited about these possibilities. Ironically and interestingly, coming at a time of COVID, when the entire globe has been paralyzed, when nature has hit the pause button on globalization, on the conceit of the human race who believe that we can, subordinate nature to our transgressions and egos. So it now creates an opportunity for us to take a different look at things. And the idea, so many things have been called into question by the COVID experience. I think first and foremost, we recognize that entrepreneurship going forward has to be something that is rethought of in the context of an alliance with nature, working in synergy with the universe, not in exploitation of nature. Secondly, recognizing that we are all in the same boat. Whether you're rich or powerful, poor or powerless, we have all suffered from the same blows inflicted by the COVID experience. And so this is an opportunity for, in rethinking what we do, to take a more integrated approach, a more harmonized approach, synchronization with nature, and looking at the green, the blue, the orange economy, a more inclusive economy, a more caring economy, a totally different approach to how we build our civilizations. So thank you very much, and we look forward to this, the rest of this journey.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jules, very much. And you've spoken briefly about mindset, and next I'd like to hear from who I consider the godfather of greatness himself, Mr. Brown. Could you address how the private sector can use its voice to move the masses and then get the governments in the Caribbean to take action?
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Jules. And it's an honor to be among such great men as Damon and Chinanu and you as well, because when I think about it, John, the statistics that I should have been in based upon my beginning, being born in Liberty City, an abandoned building on a floor with a twin brother, I should not be who I am today. Mindset, as Dr. Jules talked about, is very important. When we talk about mindset, it's not just about saying to people, think positive and be enthusiastic and everything will be all right. It's a process to change how a person sees themselves. They called people like Chinanu and Damon skaters. These are individuals that no matter where they are, you can blindfold them and drop them off anywhere on the planet, and they're going to find a way to win. They're going to find a way to get to the top. And so helping people to develop mental resolve, creating a process that you can change the culture that gives a person's life a sense of purpose and meaning and power. And once they have that, that gives their lives a sense of direction. And once their lives have a sense of direction, that allows them to begin to create the kind of future that they see for themselves. So having an ongoing process that will impact people individually and collectively. It's a campaign, if you please, to reverse the mental psychic disrepair that has happened in the past and still going on today. The next thing is upgrading the skill set. That this is a new world. I was giving my sons and daughters some advice the other day, and I say, wait, I have to stop. I just got back from Dubai. I said, I do apologize. I'm giving you some suggestions and strategies for a world that no longer exists. All my speaking engagements are gone, but now I'm doing 3 to 4 engagements a day virtually. This is the new reality. We're going from butts in the seats to eyes on the screen, from brick and mortar to click and order. So this requires a different kind of strategy. We're in this place where Einstein said the thinking that has brought me this far has created some problems that this thinking can't solve. So collectively inspiring people, giving people the thirst and the hunger, if you please, to upgrade their skill sets, to find at least 3 areas that resonate with them, that they will master, that they can come out into the marketplace and be able to make impact in the economy and live a life that will outlive them. And the other piece to it is, which is very important, and that is you can't do it alone. You can't read the label when you're locked in the box. You have to have caring feedback. There's a book called The Road to Your Best Stuff. Mike Williams, who wrote that book, was my mentor. He saw this Les Brown before I saw him. And it's very important to have someone who has a trained eye and can take you to a place within yourself that you can't go by yourself. And so helping people to develop creative, collaborative, achievement-driven, supportive relationships, to change the culture, that's major, to strip away that which has been indoctrinated in them and to begin to allow them to die to who they have been, to give birth to who they're destined to become. When we change the mindset and we help people see the value of working to upgrade their skill set, Robert Schuller said, we either expand or we are expendable, and create collaborative, achievement-driven, supportive relationships. My mother used to say, birds of a feather flock together. If you run around with losers, you'll end up a loser. I think that we have a chance to make a dent and make some impact on what's going on wherever we are.
Thank you, Les. Very, very powerful, very powerful. And now, Chinadu, could you talk a little bit about how we can use love and magic to create innovation in the private sector that can spur new ideas, new businesses, and new technologies?
Thank you, John. It's wonderful to be in the room with such a distinguished minds. That's all I can say, Damon. It's a pleasure to meet you for the first time. It's wonderful to be masterminding this epic mind shift, as Jules and Dr. Jules, you mentioned. So for us to go on this journey, then we have to be clear on what the goal is. Where are we heading to? Because without the clarity, we don't know what steps to take. So what is innovation? What is economic value? Where does wealth come from? So those are 3 questions that if I went into cities all over the world, gathered the top business leaders and the academic crew and the scientists, I'm not sure we would have an answer. But answer to that question is, I think, where we need to start, is where does wealth come from? How do we bring poverty? How do we bring abundance in pockets of poverty? How do we change mindsets to take advantage of the abundance that we're all living in? So I think that's the first step. Let's have clarity on what it is, and let's stop being fuzzy about what truly affects the daily lives of human beings. Let's go away from the rhetoric of growth and economy to really ground what our actions should be as change makers, as designers of this new systems. So given that, what I like to do is offer, given my own understanding of these processes, as we've tried to understand it at the Love and Magic Company, of that question of where does wealth come from? How do ideas turn into sources of wealth or revenue or whatever it is that you're seeking? So this is our view of it. So wealth comes from imagination. It comes from your ability to peer deeply into complexity and see a pattern or a guess that's worth putting effort into. And that guess of that pattern is your guess as to the aspiration of other human beings. What do they seek? right? So with that clarity, it then allows us to then say, okay, now if that is where wealth comes from, how do we empower our entrepreneurs to understand that that's what innovation truly is, and then practice that process? How do we get them to understand that the way they create wealth is by looking at something that's complex, that's disorderly, and removing entropy out of it, making it orderly in such a way that it appeals to another human being? Okay, so with that clarity, on a very practical basis, there are many things that can come from that. So the first thing is that we need to think about information in a very different way. So I'm a big fan of Les, as you know, and one of the wonderful pieces of Les's technology is that question of that information of identity, who you are. So that is informational value. That is wealth beyond description. So when we talk about economies and jobs, let's remember that the spring of that creative power comes from identity. And that's why Les's work around mindset shifting is so critical, is that we need to imbue a new story in the minds of millions of people, not only in America, not only in the Caribbean, in Africa, from where I was born. We tell that story of who they are, of who their capacities are. Then once that happens, then their range of possibilities open up. They see things and possibilities that they couldn't, that were restricted just because of the way their own stories. And with that birthing of imagination, they can start the process of figuring out what can they do to serve another human being. What products, what services do other human beings aspire to, right? And they can guess as to those things. Okay, so it's one thing to guess at what your customers want, what they aspire to, whether it's services, whether it's ease of purchase, whether it's selection, whatever those aspirations are. What is now the what can we do to really drive that process? So on a very practical basis, what we need to do in the Caribbean, in Africa, in many communities, even in the United States, is we need to remove the friction of creation. We need to remove all the hurdles and all the lack of information and all the frustrations that's stopping these individuals, these creative individuals, these powerful creators from expressing that innate creative potential. We're all born with creativity. We're all born, we can't help but be creative. So when we look at economic challenges, the way we think about it is all we have to think about is what are the things that are stopping that creative expression? What are the things that are, what mindsets or ideas or information that's blocking it, even from a spiritual or psychic level, your sense of identity, and let's remove those blockages. So, okay, that's on the mindset side, but on a very practical basis right now, I think it's the World Bank does an annual report called the Ease of Doing Business. Every country, all of us as citizens of our country should be asking that question. Because if wealth comes from the expression of this creative potential and guessing, then we need to look very carefully at the process in which that creative expression gets expressed. How easy is it to go from idea to traction, to test? Whatever it is, that's the next step. We should make that the thing we track regularly and improve. Okay, so once we have now the process of expression, removing all the frictions, whether it's how long it takes to start a company, or the licensing, or even the dearth of information about all the options and possibilities, right? How do we go from that to reality? So the next step then is, let's then focus on a very practical basis on the power of information. every country has an epic opportunity to release information. Information is wealth. If a country truly wanted to foster an environment of wealth creation and creativity, they should have a free flow of information of all kinds. How much does the government spend? Where does it spend? Who's in charge of spending it? Who got all that information is key to opening up economic opportunity. And the last kind of step in this process of where wealth comes from is from a very basic, very human thing, which is empathy. So your ability to guess at what another human being wants is based on your ability to predict what other human beings want. And your ability to predict what other human beings want is very related with your ability to have empathy for them. So I don't know who said this, but that millions of people live lives of quiet desperation, you know? So if that's true, then there's wealth that is available for us now, because if we can cater to those needs and those frustrations, we'll be wealthy. So what's wealth creation? The bedrock of wealth creation is this idea of being able to predict what people want, and that's truly based on your ability to have empathy for other people. And so that's, in my mind, almost like the building blocks of what what the physics of wealth creation is. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Chinedu. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that quote is by Henry David Thoreau.
Okay. Thank you, Les. Thank you.
And now, Damon, if you wouldn't mind talking to, what do you see as the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make in terms of chasing or securing outside investment funding?
First of all, thank you for having us, and Chinedu, great to meet you. And of course, Les, I'm probably, I gotta attribute a lot of my success to following Les, and when I further my conversations with Les is part of the conversation here. When the rare time that I met Les asked me what he could do for me, and it's the each one teach one mentality. That is important, but we don't have many superheroes to look out after, in our communities. Often the heroes we have, they're aligned with basketball or a sport or music, and unfortunately, when you grow up and you didn't have the internet, you see people who are entrepreneurs in the drug trade. We very few and very rarely got to see the Les Browns of the world and Chinedus of the world. And I'm fortunate enough and unfortunate enough to be one of the only African Americans related to business that have nothing to do with music and sports on television. So we don't see what we should be able to see and emulate, and there's millions like me that could inspire. Entrepreneurship in regards to getting investment and in regards to that, I think both parties hit on the thing. First of all, it is self-worth and understanding yourself, and then it's educating yourself. People of color are marginalized and systematically in trouble, and the only way that we can counteract that is to systematically change the process and systematically educate them. We start out of the building, we get out of the gate already thinking that the bank works for the government, and we have high interest rates, and we have mass incarceration. That then what it does to you, it creates a felon. It also makes you unable to vote and unable to potentially get a loan if you have to write down a felony. And we all know that all two felonies aren't the same. I don't know a young man who may be Caucasian will have $600 worth of weed and he'll get a slap on the wrist, and another person of color will get 10 years in jail, right? But where does this all start in regards to being an entrepreneur and changing the system? We generally don't experience or haven't experienced legacy wealth, grandparents, great grandparents. So we had to learn on the fly. And whether you're white or black, financial intelligence is not taught at a very young age. So add that to being Black with systematic things against you, even when you run into money or you don't know where to get money, or when you have money, you don't know how it works. If we want change, we have to teach financial intelligence at an early age of 8 and 12, right? Because if you look at today's stats, 50% of the kids that are getting out of college are going to retire with a job title that doesn't exist today, right? So now you are 16 years old, thinking about going to college, taking a $300,000 loan for a career that you don't know that you really are going to end up having, right? And so that's whether you're balancing the checkbook at home or whether you're going to being an entrepreneur and opening up a business. So the challenge, the biggest way to understand how to get funding, early seed investing of those natures, if you can ever see a Chinadu and you say, wait a minute, he did it, is to understand economically how the thing works. And then also now we're talking about financing and funding and financial intelligence. Then when you have self-identity the same way that Les is talking about, and you have mentors, then you know the value that you have to other people to say to them, forget the racism. There's one color right here that we're going to make, and it's going to be called green, because you understand your value and you understand your unique selling proposition. And you need, and what does that do? You need to be able to collaborate with people in your community. There's not a lot of, people, we weren't taught to do the Les Brown thing. Les and I are both public speakers. He's been doing it much longer than I have. And I'm here on the public speaking level and he's up here. And he says to me, how can I help you? Think about that. That gives me the mindset to want to bring other people up. So first of all, it's the fighting against the stereotype that you're in business by yourself. No, it is a team sport. It is saying how you have to collaborate with others, whether on the other side of the aisle or whatever the case is, because once you do that, you get innovation. You create different things, because I think one way, you think one way. You have manufacturing, I have a mindset, or you have real estate, and I have customers. And then of course, the finances. Business is very, very, a lot of times we emotionally get into business, and unfortunately, when you get into business, you can't know everything. You can't know how to be a manufacturer, a distributor, an advertiser, a marketer, the accountant, the lawyer, the warehouse person. You can't know all that. But the bottom line is business is very simple. You either increase sales or reduce costs. So it's really the financial intelligence that must be overly systematically given to children and entrepreneurs of all ages. Because if we look now at COVID, I think they said about 51% of African-American owned businesses will go away, period. And why is that? Because they may have been built on a very poor financial foundation. Not because they're ignorant, but because their interest rates at the banks were more. They didn't own the retail shop in the building because they didn't have enough money. They didn't know where to access capital. So you put all these things against them and they're going to crumble. So these things have to be done from a government side. And what can corporate citizens do? Well, I'm part of a fund and we're trying to get 2% of all major corporations to commit to what will be over the 10 years, a $28 billion fund, because they're making the money off of these companies and off these individuals, right? We all know that African Americans and people of color spend a lot of money. And when we get that type of money and we lean on them, what are we going to get? We're going to get broadband and Wi-Fi in schools so kids have access to the internet and the things that they need. We're going to get financial intelligence in those areas. We're going to get mentors and people who are looking for people of color to bring up the board. Or if you're a CEO, who are you highlighting as the next CEO or CFO of color, or the person that you want to keep this and give this culture to? The same way that Dr. Jules said about the professor from India who, was helping people. And by the way, I'm Trinidadian, so I really respect that. Listen, to make a long story short, where do you seek funding at first? You seek funding by understanding financially what to do with funding, because we've all been trained that you need money to make money. No, you don't. If 65% of the top 1,000 wealthiest people in the world all were self-made men and women, that means 65% of them were broke. If 65% of athletes and lotto winners are all bankrupt 3 years after winning the lotto, getting out of the league, they have money. but they're broke. That means that the tool of money has never been taught to them on how to utilize it in the most efficient way. So it starts off with education. You also have to have self-worth and understand the value that you bring to somebody else. And if they don't value, then you got to move on. And like I talked about Les, and he talked about somebody who educated him. I'm talking about mentors who don't keep it to themselves. They go out there and they pull people up the ladder and they give them the information. And you understand that every single thing in this world, why does it got to be created by somebody else? Every single thing in this world started off with one person, that one idea that took one action. And why can't that be you?
Wow, fantastic, Damon. And you probably don't know this. I kind of laughed when you said Trinidadian. Both my kids are half Trinis, half Trinidadian.
Starting off good then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. To your point about what Les said about how can he help you, Damon, his voice helped me. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, other side of the tracks, and it was listening to that man every Sunday night at the Unity Church in Detroit that really gave me hope. And so really, I want to thank you. I know you got to go, Damon. I want to thank you for your time. For those of you listening, I want you to make sure that you join virtually. Go to the link above or below this video. And these are 4 powerhouses, leaders who are not just talking, but actually backing up their words with action. You hear what Damon's doing. You heard what the Chinadu's doing. Les is constantly, every week, he's inspiring millions around the world. Dr. Jules be pushing this initiative that the UN implemented for 2030 to make sure that these 17 things are handled so that no one has to go without a place to sleep, no one has to worry about getting food, that we no longer look at people's color, but we look at their heart. And so I want to thank you, Damon. I know you got to run. Chinadu, Mr. Brown, always a pleasure. Dr. Jules, thank you. And again, make sure you guys get your tickets for this virtual event, September 23rd and 24th. Go to OECS SDM.com or the link above or below this video. And we all look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much again. Thank you guys for your time.